All right, at this time, we will go to government relations with Commissioner Woodson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to invite Nat Johnson up to give us a legislative update. If I may, before he addresses the commission, thank both he and our partners in the agency for really, obviously we were confirmed before the joint committee today. That resolution will move forward into the House and Senate chambers, or our resolutions will. The orchestration of yesterday's events didn't really appear to be that big of a deal, but to my knowledge, I don't recall a joint session of those two committees in my legislative lifetime. And I know that there was a great deal of work that both the House and Senate chief clerks were doing to make that a productive, well-organized and thoughtful conversation, and they succeeded. And I just very much appreciate the agency, very much appreciate both speakers' offices, the chief clerk's offices, for really going out of their way to be a partner to the commission in organizing that event on our behalf. And so really appreciate Nat and the director's leadership in that, and just want to thank him. But I know he's got an important report to give, but wanted to thank him before he gave it.
Thank you. I also want to thank you all for the time you put in and going down to see the members and expressing your interest in making sure that that communication line is open, and that really helped as that process went forward. It's not completed. It does have to be voted on the floor, and there's one more opportunity for a poke or two that goes on out there, but I don't see any problems with it, and I anticipate that happening next week. What I've got is, I hope to be a series of very short legislative reports. Had a little video last week of some past things that I'd talked about, friends in the agency put together, I'll say that lightly. But one of the things that I was up here last year and I was talking about, we were tracking right at 100 bills that had a direct impact on the agency. We'll report that right now, and today, at the close of business is the final day for filing of general bills. The numbers have cut off, will cut off today, but I see less than 15 bills that could possibly have an impact on the agency right now. I don't see any of them out there that, as written, has substantive impact on the agency. Now, there are several caption bills out there, and we talk about those a lot, and I'm sure everybody understands that. If you want to file a bill in the General Assembly, you have to put down what the bill is about generally. You can be very specific and go down to the exact chapter and the subchapter, say exactly what letters and words you want to change in it. Or you can say a very broad thing that I want to go in Title 70 that deals with wildlife. You can come back later then, that would be a caption bill. You come back later, put an amendment on it that makes a substantive change. So I think that's what we've got the majority of out there right now. We'll have to look at amendments as we go forward, but I hope we continue in that vein and have a series of very short legislative reports. But that's basically what I'm seeing out there right now. It is about 15 bills like that, and two of those are actually bills that the agency has asked members to file on our behalf in case something came up, either the boating side or the wildlife side. But once again, I want to thank you for the effort that y'all put forth, and I think that made the process go a lot smoother yesterday. So, any questions, ma'am?
Any questions, members?
I've got one. Is there anything specific to these hog reserves moving from our jurisdiction to agriculture?
There are no bills that are filed now that have any substantive change. There are several bills out there that have a caption that would obviously carry that, including ours. But as far as bills that have language in them, like that deal with any specific subject, I mean, there was a bill filed yesterday afternoon that dealt with the height of hogs. It redefined what the height of hogs were. Obviously, that could be used for that. It was a caption bill. And it could have an amendment put on it later. But as far as any specific language in any bill that makes a substantive change to the agency, there's nothing out there right now. Obviously, some of these bills are going to, people are going to put amendments on it. There are several out there that we know that we're working with the sponsors with. They just simply put them out there to, in case it was needed, and there's some issues that we're going to try to address on the side. And I think the best way to address many of those issues is not through legislation, and I think the sponsors agree with that. They just wanted to make sure that there was some mechanism out there in case it did come down to that. But there's nothing out there that had any specific impact on the agency right now.
Nat, would you just share with the commission the process of notice for when someone does file an amendment, when a caption bill becomes more specific? That typically will, obviously, somebody will file an amendment and it'll get very clear very quickly. And as far as the timing for when you have access to that information and when you can share it with the director and with members of the commission.
There's a couple of different ways that's done. A lot of times, if it's clearly a caption bill, that's held on the clerk's desk. And it's held on the clerk's desk until a substantive amendment is filed. And when that substantive amendment is filed, then that bill is then assigned to a committee to go forward. So that's one way it's noticed. If you take a bill like the one that was filed yesterday, that did go in and make a change, and it changed the law on what the height of a hog should be, how it should be defined. Now, that bill will probably be assigned to the committee, but what that does, and it's different rules in the House and the Senate. Senate, if I'm not mistaken, has to give, what, I think a week's notice when the bill comes out that there has been an amendment filed. We work very closely with both the House and the Senate committees and the chairman, and we work very closely to make sure that whatever those amendments are going to come up, that there's not going to be any surprises, that everybody's going to know what's going on. We meet with them every week to go over what the calendar is going to be and try to make sure that everybody knows what goes on. There's some very specific rules in the Senate. The rules are a little bit looser in the House as far as filing amendments go. But we generally do get some advance notice about what those are going to be, especially on the Senate side. And the bill's got to go through both houses. So you do have a notice from that on both sides.
Thank you, Nat. Any other further questions?
It's not really a question, it's more of a comment, I guess. Nat, we really appreciate everything that you've done and all that. And I wanted to thank John Mayer and Kurt Miles. They come to the Farm Bureau has policy development meetings all over the state, and they, I guess it's legislative kickoff meetings at this time of year, and they, TWRA showed up and made a good presentation there, and it helps build a good public relations between the wildlife and the agriculture community. So, but I just want to say I appreciate that. They done a great job.
Well, I just can't say enough about what the regional managers do to help me do my job. I mean, I can't know what everything that goes on and every question that every member asks me down there about what's going on down at Walnut Log and all those kind of things. But they're so responsive when I call them to get back immediately or get me in touch with the person that knows that immediately. And it makes the whole agency look better when we get that response. And I don't publicly say that a lot, but I think they know I do appreciate what they do.
Okay, if that's the questions, thank you, Nat, very much, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To Budget Committee, Commissioner Schuster.
Thank you, Chairman Brown. The Budget Committee recognizes Daryl Radijak, Chief of the Wildlife Division.
Thank you, Commissioner Schuster. Before I get started with this budget expansion, Bobby Wilson and I, me being Chief of Wildlife and Bobby being Chief of Fisheries, have a kind of a little competition going, and he just challenged me to provide food for you guys next commission meeting, because he provided the silver carp, and he recommended I provided quail. And I might be calling some of you to bring side dishes just so we have enough to eat. We'll see if one of these days we'll work something out there. But
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that Mr. Radijak provide food at our next meeting. Something good.
We'll see what we can do. All kidding aside, I come before the commission to request a budget expansion. What we're requesting here is a budget expansion of $5,400. And what it is for our elk program. As you know, we have one tag each year that's given to an NGO to sell at auction. And that money it's been a gentleman's agreement that whatever money is raised from the sale of that elk tag then goes back to our elk program. And Steve Bennett contacted me a few months ago. Steve is our elk coordinator in East Tennessee. And he does a fantastic job staying within his budgets that we give him every year. And what he was wanting to do is to get these monies, from the sale of the last tag, which brought in $6,800 from the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Foundation. Built into the rule that allows that sale to take place, the NGO is allowed to keep up to 20% of that money to recoup some of the costs. And so that equates to $5,440. Ken Tarkenton is a stickler about rounding numbers, so we're going to round it to $5,400 and request an expansion of $5,400, which is the money from the sale of that elk tag, to go into a regional budget so Steve Bennett could use that money on the ground for the elk program. Just to give you an idea, I had a meeting with Steve yesterday, and he has some ideas of purchasing some elk collars, some of those GPS collars, so he can find out where some of those elk that disappear off the WMA, where they really go, because once they're off the radar screen, we have no idea where they go, and this may lend some insight. And so this money is not licensed dollars, it's from the sale of that auction tag back in December, or earlier than that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Daryl. Are there any questions from the commission on this?
I have one. Have any of the elk that's ever been killed been collared?
I don't believe so. There was some that had tags,
Yeah.
and we were able to identify. In fact, I think the first year, one of the elk was one of the original stocked elk, so that put it at 11 years of age when it was harvested, but I don't believe any had radio collars on them.
Is it big enough fire?
We have built into the elk hunting regulation that tracking devices are not, because I believe there's 20-some elk out there that currently have the standard GPS, standard radio collars. What Steve would like is a GPS collar which uses the satellite to collect the information.
Commissioner
Yeah, I
Spillier?
just want to comment on that. I went and visited with Steve, and he showed me around. It's an awesome program, and he's great at what he does. These collars, by the way, what he's using right now, a lot of them are real antiquated.
Mhm.
And I think the GPS collars would be a great idea, because apparently these elk travel quite a ways, and in places that we would normally not know, and I think that's a great idea.
Thank you. We agree.
Any other questions? Questions from the audience? All right. I need a motion from the Budget Committee to approve a budget expansion of $5,400, which is money received from the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Foundation for the 2012 elk auction tag. The money will be specifically spent on Tennessee elk management. Second? Those in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes carry and the budget expansion passes. Thank you, Daryl. All right. Yeah, we're good. The Budget Committee recognizes Gordon Martin, Real Estate Specialist, the Engineering Division.
Thank you, Chairperson and Commissioners. I'd like to give you an update on their real estate report. Starting out in Campbell County, our transaction with the La Follette Utility Board, this documentation is being signed by the utility company and should be signed by state officials shortly. In Coffee County, the Beaver transaction, which is a wetland tract, the documents have been prepared for final approval of the AG, and this should be closing out within a week to 10 days. At Wolf River, we have 6 gifts and 4 tracts of land that we're purchasing under the wetland program, and these options and offers are going before the Wolf River Conservancy Board on the 20th of the month. Moving over to Fentress County, the Skinner Mountain acquisition from the Nature Conservancy, the property has been approved by the Building Commission, and there's an appraisal that's being bid to determine the fair market value. Up in Jackson County, we've got the Blackburn Fork property, the Branson tract. We have an appraisal that has been completed on it, and it's being reviewed by our federal review appraiser. And let's see, I think that about does it today.
All right, thank you, Gordon.
Y'all have a happy Valentine's.
I don't have a question. I wanted to make a comment to compliment Kirk Miles. Recently, there was a hunter that had some questions and complaints about the situations he encountered on was it Alpine Mountain? Yeah, and Kirk did a good job of responding to that and thoroughly explaining to the gentleman that the involvement that we had there, that we didn't completely control that. We had a lease arrangement, and I think it was to the satisfaction of the hunter, but I think he did a good job getting on that real quick, and appreciate that.
Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
If you excuse me just a minute, for an informational item, today, Commissioner Schuster accompanied us down to the House subcommittee, and they heard our budget. The director presented it, did a really good job. And it was passed on to the House. Next Wednesday, the Senate will hear our budget at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, I believe. If any of you would like to come, you're more than welcome to. We'd appreciate it. Just wanted to make mention of that.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Chairman Brown. That completes all the business concerning the Budget Committee.
Is there any other business to come before the commission at this time? Any announcements? All right, we will be adjourned till 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.